Hello.
Hello. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Steph. How are you?
I'm good, darling. How much fun is this? I haven't seen you for a year and a half, and we get to connect on webinars across the world.
Fantastic. And here we are to talk about building the world's most planet positive spirits brand.
We are, and this
Unfortunately,
is
without our fabulous fonts.
no. Well, yeah, I
But
can
we
see
can't
our
have
fonts
everything.
aren't doing us services, but everyone. Hello. We have no idea who's out there. This is Tim and I have both done 2 chats yesterday. This is the second day of this sustainable and virtual wine and spirit show. And it's really exciting and thrilling to be trying out new tech and to do things in a way that we hope have a much more positive impact on the beloved Big Blue. Now, just bear with us. It is very, very weird presenting to ourselves. Tim and I speak every day. The lockdown has made it so that we have not been able to physically see one another, having only just launched our drinks brand 2 years ago. So this is as good as it gets. So I am going to be head of the passing of the slides, and Timothy, I believe you're going to kick off this fantastic
This
talk.
is you. This
is
you.
Me.
Yeah.
This is me.
I get the boring technical stuff. You get the fun stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Stephanie Jordan, co-founder of Avallen Spirits. And on the other little screen is Timothy Etherington Judge, my brother in arms, eco-warrior through and through. And Tim and I, after extensive careers in the hospitality industry and working for the number one biggest drinks company in the world, hint, hint, can you guess who? Well, we ended up leaving. We left because our values were no longer aligned to our true selves. And so 3 years ago, one bright day, as all good stories happened, Tim and I sat down around a table with a bottle of, guess what? Wine. And Tim and I tried to set the world right. And as we set the world right, we gave ourselves a task, a mission, and we said, what would it look like if we tried to create the drinks brand, the spirits brand, that gave back more than it take? What if we created a drinks brand that was planet positive? Actually, what if we created a drinks brand that was climate positive? What does this even mean? And so thus the journey began for Avallen on a mission to be the world's most planet positive drinks brand. And that launch happened on World Bee Day, which is May in 2009. So we are just 2 years old. 19, otherwise we would be adults. We're not. We are a baby brand, but we have a hell of a lot of energy to try and ignite and inspire our whole industry. Tim, tell us more.
So, on the mission to create the world's most planet positive spirits brand, we wanted to be completely transparent with what we do. And we saw a presentation earlier from Two Drifters Rum, talking about EcoChain, who are an amazing company that conduct lifecycle analysis for business. And lifecycle analysis, if you don't know what that is kind of going through your production process with a fine-tooth comb to look at whichever elements of impact for that business that you choose. For us, when we briefed EcoChain, who are an amazing company based in the Netherlands, we briefed them to look at 2 different factors. For us, being planet positive isn't just about carbon dioxide emissions. It is much more than that. We wanted to look at carbon emissions. We wanted to look at our water consumption, because water is always the main ingredient in alcohol, and we have, all alcohol has an enormous water footprint, and it's becoming increasingly scarce. We also wanted to look at our biodiversity impact, and also pesticide and fertilizer use. For us, these are the 4 pillars of being planet positive. So we're trying to go beyond just looking at carbon dioxide. So we commissioned EcoChain. Oh, back Steph, don't give the game away. We commissioned EcoChain to do our life cycle analysis and use their incredible technology in their tools to measure 2 of those 4 elements for us. So they looked at our entire production cycle, which we like to call from blossom to bottle, all the way from what happens in the amazing orchards that we're in, right through to the distillery door before the bottles come and get collected. And we also wanted to look at the carbon dioxide emissions of that process and the water consumption of that process, because these were two factors that were super important to us. And as Steph has already shown you, the results are in.
So Tim, given that you're in Cornwall and I am in Amsterdam, and I currently can't see anything but the presentation, I say that when we want to pass a slide, we say buzz.
Buzz, okay. Buzz. There we go. So the big news for us is this slide is cutting off the bottom of the text, so you can't see all of it. But we are a climate positive brand. You might be more familiar with the term carbon negative, but because we are all about being positive, we much prefer the term climate positive. It's also the term that Patagonia, our big inspiration. Everybody loves a bit of Patagonia. And also the World Wildlife Fund used. So we're committed to the term climate positive because we don't believe in being negative. So the big number here is that for every single bottle of Avallen we produce, we remove 2.73 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent from the atmosphere. So that means we are actively working towards solving the problem of climate change. What's really interesting about this is there is no offsetting required. So we are not purchasing offset credits. We are not buying carbon credits from Climeworks or looking at planting trees. That 2.73 kilograms comes entirely through our production process, or what they term in the climate world as insetting rather than offsetting. So it's a much better way to do it. If you can be climate positive through your production, you therefore require no external offsetting whatsoever. Buzz.
Tim, before we buzz on to the next slide, do you think we could be so bold as to claim that for every bottle of Avallen you drink, you are actively combating global climate change?
You could, but you'd have to drink a hell of a lot to make even the slightest bit of difference. But you know, it's a start, and it's better to have a positive impact upon climate change than to be contributing to the problem.
I couldn't agree more. So Tim already started to touch upon the water consumption. And I think it's really important here that we highlight that everything we have done is verified. We don't want you to take our word for it, okay? We work for the big drinks company. We know the stories that are told, and unfortunately, the lies that we are told. And so 3 years ago, when we sat down with this blank sheet of paper and had the opportunity to create something that was sustainable by design, you know, and that is absolutely our USP and almost our competitive advantage, right? We're not trying to retrofit sustainability here. We don't even believe in sustainability. We believe sustainability has failed us, and it is all about proactive and positive action. But the one thing we did say was transparency. Absolutely heart and soul of our company and our mission. Whatever we did, we had to show patte blanche, and we needed to find a way to bring this all to life. And Tim will touch a little bit more on the partners that we have been able to find and connect with and create a community around the brand. Ultimately, Avallen is more than a drinks brand. It is an ecosystem for the new type of drinks brand, right? Yeah. But just to kind of reiterate this water piece. Go ahead.
Yes, we talk about water. You're thirsty, Steph. Should we talk about water?
I'm going to talk about water. I'm talking about water.
Talk about water. Because water is super important. If you think about any bottle of beer, wine, or spirits, the number one ingredient inside that bottle is the water.
It's water. And so we claim Avallen is made of nothing but apples, water, and thyme. And we actually go beyond that and prove it. But I think what was so interesting is that when we started on this journey, we were potentially focused on the carbon side of things. And then when it came to fruition and we realized the value of water, that water is being traded on the New York Stock Exchange, that there are water wars, and the absolute crazy amount of water that our industry uses, whether it's to irrigate crops or convert cereal from starch into sugar and mash and so on. And then here we find ourselves in the beautiful orchards of Normandy, and guess what? There is no artificial irrigation. The AOC bans it. And guess what? You don't need water to convert apple juice into cider. The only amount of water we use in our production process is, if anything, to wash the apples ever so slightly. And I say ever so slightly because, by the way, they are pesticide free. And then obviously to dilute our distillate. So for 170 cl bottle of Avallen, we are using 1.2 litres of bottle. Tim was so extensive in our life cycle analysis. This includes the water used in the toilets of the distillery. It includes the water used in the coffee of the distillery. Yeah. And let's just say, let's compare it to an industry standard of, say, a bottle of bourbon. This is 13 times less water. And that is something that for now we're not addressing, really talking about in the drinks industry. But this is the next big thing that we need to be paying attention to.
I think what's also key to note there is that bourbon figure, which comes from the Beverage Industry Environmental Roundtable, only relates to the water that is used at the distillery. So it does not include any water that is used in the irrigation of the corn. And cereal grains are heavily reliant on artificial irrigation. And sugarcane, for example, which is used to make rum, is one of the top 3 thirstiest crops on the planet when it comes to the amount of water it needs to grow. So that number, if you include the agricultural side, will be inflated enormously. Whereas ours is 1.2 litres from the orchards to the distillery door.
Including all the coffee that our wonderful people at the distillery enjoy.
And they do like to drink a lot of coffee. It's not very good coffee, but they like
it. France. The coffee's dreadful in France.
It is. So why apples? Why did we choose to make a spirit from apples in a category that has been long forgotten by most people, that if you do see a bottle, it's normally very dusty, sitting at the back of a shelf or on the back of a bar. So when we started out on this journey, we had a blank sheet of paper to make the world's most planet positive spirits brand. And we decided that the first thing that we needed to do, if we were going to be true to that mission, was to look at the raw materials. All alcohol, maybe the exception of air vodka, starts life as an agricultural product. So it's only right that we look at the environmental impact of that agricultural product. I think the wine industry is much better at doing this than the spirits industry. But in the spirit, we needed to look at, when it comes to making spirits, what are the major raw materials that are used. So we looked at cereal grains, such as wheat, which are used to make whiskeys, most vodkas, most gins. We looked at sugarcane, used to make rum and cachaça. We looked at agaves to make tequila and mezcal. And then we looked finally at apples. And we assessed them across 4 different metrics that we talked about already. So carbon dioxide emissions, pesticide and fertilizer use, biodiversity loss, and water consumption. And on every single one of those 4 metrics, apples came out on top. And the apples are a non-annual crop, so they grow every year without needing to harvest the entire plant, unlike wheat and sugarcane. They sequester large amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The orchards in Normandy require no pesticides and no fertilizers. Very, very traditional orchards. Wheat, sugarcane, and increasingly agave are what they call monocrops. So a single crop grown across a very large area. In the case of wheat and sugarcane, they are wind pollinated. Whereas the traditional orchards in Normandy are thriving with biodiversity. You'll have 10 different varieties of apples within a single orchard. Sometimes you'll have pears in there as well. You'll have meadowland in between, the grassland, which is very limited in what you can, the way you can cut it in seasons. So you have lots of flowers, which becomes like a meadow. And then around the outside, you have the hedgerows. So they really are kind of beautiful havens for biodiversity. So we get all these wonderful pollinators, mammals, birds, lots of different plants, as opposed to the enormous kind of areas that are grown for wheat, where you can stand and just see wheat in every single direction, and the same as sugarcane. So this is why we chose apples as being the best raw material to make alcohol from when it comes to making the world's most planet positive spirits brand. Buzz.
Before we buzz, Tim, how do we say apple in Spanish?
Apple.
In French?
I don't know. Pom.
You so know this. Pom and manzana, because I know we have a lot of people watching us in Latin America. So more on how we did it. Once we had identified that the raw material was the heart and absolute soul of everything we needed to do at Avallen. And, I touched upon this a little bit yesterday on my talk about ancestral wisdom, women and terroir. And back to Tim's point, how the spirits industry is so far removed from the agricultural process that they almost, don't hold themselves accountable for the impact. And so they're focusing on, packaging and distribution at best. But the heart and soul really is what you make things from. Now, the next step was to find the right distillery partner. And, we do believe in serendipity. We believe that things happen for a reason. And Tim and I were lucky enough to find the absolute perfect partner in Normandy. So we work with Distillerie Coquerel, which is in the region of La Manche on the border of Brittany, or but 42 kilometers away from Le Mont Saint-Michel. Now, what was amazing about finding this partner is that we need someone that had absolute traceability on the whole entirety of the production chain. So we really needed to be able to trace the production from blossom to bottle. And what you'll find, unfortunately, in the Calvados region is there's been quite a lot of disinvestment over the years. And with that, some of the two bigger players actually have sold off their cideries and, let alone own any orchards themselves. So we weren't getting that full transparency. So finding Pierre, the third producer in volume and value in the region, family owned, third generation, really was the key to unlocking this project. Once we'd identified the distillery, we were able to work with him on the right liquid for Avallen. Avallen is a young Calvados. To be a Calvados, it's an AOC, an Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée. There are rules and regulations, one of which is that you must be aged for 2 years in French oak barrels. And we really wanted to keep Avallen on the bright side of life. We needed it to be apple forward, zesty, fresh, vibrant, really adaptable as well to mixology. We knew that if we were going to revitalize the Calvados category, we needed to shift it from the digestif occasion and move it back to the aperitif moment. So by having a much younger brandy, but one that's really kind of almost smells like a cider, it allows for us to play in that mixed drink opportunity. So it's, Avallen and tonics with a slice of apple, Avallen and ginger ales, Avallen and apple juice, and then you can shake it up into various cocktails and stir it down. But again, on the liquid side, made of nothing but apples, water, and thyme, and working with blockchain technology to prove our claims. We could have added sugar. We could have added boisé and caramel at the end of the bottling process. We did not. And Tim will concur as an ex-bartender. Bartenders, they can add sugar, but they definitely can't remove it. So for us, it was really, really vital to make sure that this liquid was clean, natural, crisp. And ultimately, the no addition of sugar is another step towards less is more from an environmental perspective. Now, on the packaging side of things, Avallen is bottled in the lightest weight bottle available to us at the time. I think this is really important on the project. Everything we have done is what we knew at a time and a place. We treat this company almost like a tech company. We upgrade, we evolve. We're not set in stone. It's about learning, connecting, improving. So this currently is the solution we have, a lightweight bottle with 50% recycled glass, which is just around 500 grams when empty. From a labeling perspective, we found a solution that was best available to us and locally sourced was a recycled apple pulp label, vegetable dyes. We limited any usage of metal foils or, additional treatments to our label. And this is something I've got to give it to Tim. It's groundbreaking. Basically, we truly believe that there's not a waste problem in the world. There is a design problem. And so after extensive hours sitting actually at one of the leading bars here in Amsterdam called Flying Dutchman, Tim looked up at this wall of bottles and realized that bottles were vertical, yet everyone seemed to be using horizontal labels. And in order to create a disruption, we twisted our word mark onto the verticality of the bottle. And Avallen, by the way, means apple tree in Old Cornish. So you've got this sensation of a growing tree, but actually when you line it up in a back bar, we still managed to get standout and disruption without needing to use any harmful processes. Obviously, the bottle is plastic free. And of course, we chose a cork finish. Now, distribution and transportation is also essential. Zero plastic as much as viably possible. So, for example, when you do purchase a bottle of Avallen through an e-com partner in the UK, you will receive it in a flexi hex. Many of you may already know this company, also based out of Cornwall, but basically striving to find environmental solutions. And they're just absolutely stunning as well. In terms of our partners, we are now 1% for the planet and B Corp pending. You will see on our bottles, B positive was the kind of original vision we had. We need wild bees to pollinate every single blossom that becomes an apple that goes into Avallen. And wild bees, as we all know, are under real threat due to urbanization and pesticide abuse. And so we found that to be a really genuine way to articulate our philosophy to our end customer, the citizens that would purchase Avallen. But that is evolving, and there's been a lot of talks over the past 2 days around the importance of educating and elevating young women and children, young girls, in terms of actually being able to address the global climate challenge that we're facing. And so via 1% for the planet, we can currently orientate that revenue towards the right causes. And lastly, to touch again upon transparency, the essential thing in everything we're talking about is the ability to prove it. It's the ability to have third-party verification and to have data. Without data, we can't measure anything, we can't prove anything. So again, finding that ecosystem of partners to help us bring this vision to life has been so critical to our vision and mission of Avallen. Buzz.
You didn't say buzz. Yeah, you are premature or late, but you're buzzing. So that's a lot of what we do next. But as Steph said, we are small, so we can be agile. So we're constantly looking to improve our performance in our mission to be the world's most planet positive spirits brand. So what's next? We have a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. So first up is B Corp. I'm sure many of you out there are aware of B Corp. We are in the waiting list. We have submitted our B assessment. We got a nice score of well over 100. So we're now just waiting for that process to kind of come to an end. So hoping before the end of the year, we will be officially certified B Corporation. The green thing in the middle, you may not be quite so familiar with. So the green thing in the middle is called an eco tote. So we are extremely excited to be one of the first global partners with a tech company called ETHOS Spirits, who are promising to bring one of the biggest innovations I've ever seen to the global spirits industry. That little green thing is actually a 4.5 liter glass and aluminium tamper-proof refillable container that we will be partnering with. So we will ship bulk liquid to a filling facility where these will be filled, shipped out to bars, restaurants around the UK initially, and eventually to all of the other partner markets. None of these will ever travel more than 200 kilometers from their filling station. Once they are empty, they are collected by an electric truck or electric van, taken back to the filling facility, cleaned, refilled. The whole idea being that in our life cycle assessment, we discovered that the bottle has one of the biggest embodied carbon elements. So by removing the amount of bottles that we require, we can reduce our not only our our carbon dioxide emissions, but also our waste responsibility. Because one thing that all of us do as producers is push the waste problem down the line to the bars and restaurants who then have to deal with it. So this is a 6-bottle case in a single container that's reusable. So it means that we can save an enormous amount of carbon dioxide, an enormous amount of bottles, offer the product at a slightly better margin for the bars and restaurants. And I think this is one of the most exciting innovations that I've seen in a long time. And we're very excited to be one of their first global partners. And then finally, we are already on the journey to becoming organic. It's complicated. Avallen is made from apples that come from 300 different orchards, all across the region of La Manche, none more than 20 kilometers radius from the distillery. So super, super hyper local product, but because of the way that Calvados is very much a community product, it's impossible for all of those tiny orchards to have organic certification. But we have a logistic strategy. Some of the bigger orchards are organic certified, so we'll only be sourcing apples for Avallen from those organic certified orchards. But as Steph mentioned earlier, Avallen is aged for somewhere between 2 to 3 years in oak barrels. So the lag of time of switching towards organic apples to then having a 3-year-old aged product is ongoing. So in maybe 2 or 3 years, you'll start to see the first organic certified bottles of Avallen on the market, which is very exciting. So, as I said, it's all about constant improvement.
Absolutely, Jim. And as you say, like, it's the mindset of the student. You know, we're never done, we're never finished, and we always have to be open-minded. Now, just to kind of conclude a little bit on the vision of Avallen, we spoke a lot about raw material production, distribution and life cycles. But ultimately, we do believe that business must serve the greater good. And so with that, the philosophy and the energy that you bring to that is essential, the ethos of your company. And that goes into your marketing and commercial strategies, into your employment, diversity and inclusion hires. But ultimately, I just really think it's a mindset. So we believe that business must be good for the planet, quite simply because if it isn't, well, guess what? There'll be no planet left. Well, actually, there will be. We won't be here. And you've always got to walk the talk. Like, you 100% have to live and breathe the brand and what you stand for. So, Tim, for example, has been vegan for nearly 20 years. I'm not. I flex, but I'm very conscientious. Over 20. How old are you, Timothy?
Old enough to have been vegan for 22 years.
It goes beyond just our dietary preferences. We bank with ETHOS, which is the leading sustainable bank here in the Netherlands. Our business card are made from seed paper. You can plant them. We're really, really conscientious of every little decision. Tim and I have driven from Amsterdam to Normandy many a time in electric cars, of course. But guess what? The chargers don't work in France. So a standard 8-hour trip, which, X amount of carbon emission has taken us, if not double, triple. But we are early adopters, and it is so, well, my bottom was very sore, but it is very, very important to, lead with example. We understand that you need cool and funky and wonderful POS and swag to promote and build your brand, but you know what? You can make it purposeful, and you can make sure that it doesn't end up in landfill. So we have these little biodegradable hand grenades filled with wildflower seeds, which are food for the bees. You just wet them, you throw them, you grow them. Tells our story. They're fantastic. They're high value items that people really want. And that they will put them to good use. Again, innovate or die. Act like a tech company. It is so important to constantly stay with that attitude and a mindset of a student. Definitely don't do it alone. We're building an amazing community of people around us. And also, I think Tim and I are super, super aware of what we know and what we're good at, but really that we don't know a whole lot. And so it's really interesting how some incredible people have been gravitating to us over the past 3 years and really going above and beyond for Avallen. And I think last but not least, and it's been tricky the past 12 months to be positive, but we truly, truly do believe that we are shifting as a global community and that we are reconnecting spiritually and also, to nature and listening a little bit more to what's required from us to be more. And that's a huge call to action in our day-to-day work. So, Tim, we've actually got a question. So if you just want to wrap up on the Be More report.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So if you are watching, if you want to grab your phone, turn the camera on.
Anybody is out there?
Is anybody out there? Scan the QR code. And that will take you to our Be More report, which is essentially our sustainability report, which has all of the juicy details about how we got to where we are. So you can download our LCA. You can find out all about the breakdown and everything that we do. So
he does not lie. I did a live demo.
Steph, we have some questions. Let's get to them.
We do.
So,
we do.
Do you see a growing consumer, millennials, Gen X, etc., that are focusing more on the sustainable process and the spirit product? Well, I think the first thing to say in this question is that we don't look at consumers. We see people, we see citizens. We think that people are placed on this planet to do more than just service capitalist companies and consume. But we do see that people are taking sustainability much more seriously. All of the big accounting companies have done research into this that show that the vast majority of people out there are looking to purchase products that are aligned with their own personal values and also believe that companies need to have a positive impact on the environment. Next question. Do you share your development success challenges with peer distillers? Is there a community out there that focuses on sharing sustainable business practices? Yes, because we started one ourselves. So we are part of a group called Kindred Spirits, which is a collection of small startup and some larger drinks companies, both spirits brands, non-alcs, beers, wines, all sorts of weird and wonderful, amazing things. And off that, we have also spun off a separate group, which is a WhatsApp community of companies that have a specific focus on sustainable business practices. We very much, when we set out to create Avallen, we want to be leaders within sustainability, and we want to be able to not only provide best practice, but also help other people along on this journey. If we're truly going to solve the problems of the climate crisis and catastrophic biodiversity loss, we're certainly not going to do it on our own. And we want to kind of share our learning, share our knowledge, and bring everyone else along on the journey with us.
Tim, can you see the QR code right now on your screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, somebody's asking if we can share it again. Listen, if you can't see the screen, just head over to www.avallenspirits.com. The first thing you'll see is a paragraph that says download the Be More report. Otherwise, come and visit us at the stand. It is one of the resources available for you at Pavilion Número 2. Yeah, I agree with everything Tim said. Isn't that good?
Thank God for that. No arguments this evening. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It was lovely to speak to you all. Thank you for the questions. Come visit us at the stand, download the Be More report, and we'd love to know what you think of it.
And remember to stay positive. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Gracias. Adios.